I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is FTB Genesis. Resource Get. That is our next challenge, our next task. And this is going to lead us into, well, some tech magic. That's right, you've heard it here. Tech so powerful that it is now perceived as magic. And we are going to dive into a couple of mods. One being Botania. Well, you see the little flower above my head. Yes, Botania. And we're also going to dabble a little bit in mystical agriculture. And this should lead us into some really easy seed production. I also am tasked, as you see behind me, with clearing out some space. And so that means the deconstruction of the entire area behind me. I thought I was an architect, not a demolitionist. They're definitely not the same thing. Now, after just a little bit of cleanup, I think this looks fantastic. Look at that. So we now have a lot more space to work with other mods. And this is going to be very nice because we're going to need a ton of space for a lot of the new infrastructure we're going to be getting into. Now, to dive into that infrastructure, it talks about resource get here. It says, by this point, you really want to work towards getting some redstone renewability. And at the moment, the only way we've gotten redstone is by going out and finding some redstone torches and maybe some things we've gotten for quests. Now, it does say we can go through the selective breeding chapter in order to get the red wheat seeds. If we go to this section and we take a look at how we could get this, I did a little bit of testing, and it turns out that it is very difficult in order to get this in this breeding method. And I think there's a much simpler way. It may seem harder at first, but I think it's going to be a little bit easier in the long run to get our initial seed that you see right here. So what it wants you to do here is you have to kind of keep it below a certain light level. Also, it has to be in an enclosed space, and you're going to basically be crossbreeding netherwort. I don't want to go about it that way. Instead, what I want to do is I want to get into the biotechnology chapter. And we can't go too deep into the biotechnology just yet, but we can get a few things started, such as going ahead and getting ourselves a petal apothecary and getting started with Botania. Very basic Botania, and Botania in here is not going to work the same way as you might think. So there should be some experimental mystical flower essence in the vault barrels. It says, now before I get carried away, I should dive back into our quest under the Project Genesis section, back under the resource get, and read the bottom line. And it says, whichever route you choose, you will need to obtain Terra wort first. Now our goal is to get a redstone seed, red wheat, and well, we need to go back to the selective breeding and go Terra who? So yes, by exposing the alien flora to our atmosphere, it has taken on an entirely new property. This plant now seems edible and extremely robust. In fact, it seems to be able to cure the user of radiation and other maladies. Please submit a sample immediately so that our scientists in the Nexa can continue to discover additional properties. And it goes on to explain how we're actually going to do this. And so we basically need to plant netherwort in our crop sticks, and we need to have snow underneath. And if you're wondering how we get snow, we actually got it early on. And so we should have a singular snow block lingering around. I think if I remember correctly, I ended up putting that snow block in one of these chests in here, and it's been stored away. I just have to find it. It seems I never actually completed this. So if you're wanting the snow block, it says save this for later. It is under the breeding mode, and you just need to accept the quest. So yes, it is under the breeding section here that talks about it. And so we now have our snow block, and we should be able to get started with this. So how are we going to go about this? Well, I think for right now, I am just simply going to place the snow block under here, place my crop sticks, and we need to gather some netherwort and get that growing while we start looking for mystical essence, because we're going to need a little bit of it. Now, once this is fully grown, it's supposed to, when fully grown, it's supposed to turn into the Terra wort with the snow block as underneath. So given a little bit of time, this is going to do that. And while we're doing that, we should hunt out some of those barrels that it mentioned in the quest line and find some more of that mystical essence. Now, after my run-in at the agricultural wing, I managed to get exactly 11, it seemed like, throughout the barrels there. So yeah, expect to find at least 11 of the essence, and I'll leave you to discover those. Quick tip, by the way, if you hold down shift, you can see what's inside those inventories without actually opening them up. So my crop is getting super duper close in order to actually converting. It's about to hit its maximum stage. And this is where I actually wonder, does it grow to be full netherwort and then convert? Or does it just immediately grow into terrawort and mutate? That's something that I don't know. We only have one snow block as of right now. We'll hopefully be able to get more here soon. But now it is converted into netherwort. But if I give it enough time, does it then convert into this? So it appears that it takes multiple attempts. So it finally grew this time and is now the terrawort. Apparently there's a 50% chance that it can turn into the terrawort while this is underneath. So essentially we now have the wart we need. That's pretty cool. Terra-hoo. And we should get a nice little boost now that we have the terrawort. It does take a little bit of time. Make sure you're keeping up with your hydration cell, hydrating it, and using bone meal to make sure its fertilizer is maxed out. That will make sure it grows as fast as it possibly can. Now, I don't know if we can just place this right away. So if I take these two and I go ahead and we increase one of them to a 15, 15, 15, I wonder if I'm able to take this and grow it without that underneath it, because I think the snow block is just simply for the mutation, right? And to that, I'm going to say I have honestly no idea, but I'm going to go ahead and try and place this in here. So that's gone in there. Now it does say it's terrawort, which is exactly what we want. We want to make sure to bone meal, max fertilizer, and also max hydrate. That's pretty standard for just about any crop you plant down. And then we'll let this grow and see if it does anything without having the stuff next to it. And the same thing goes for this. I'm going to keep this terrawort. I'm going to go ahead and plant this one, and they'll do the same thing. So yeah, we're going to get our crops up and running. We got to get a bunch of this because this is going to be a very useful thing because it's going to be used for making the seeds in the apothecary that we're about to get into. Oh boy, things are about to start really exploding. Now hold on, not like actually exploding, just like things are about to start happening. You know what, the more I think about it, things could technically start exploding. I don't want to get into that though. Now with all of this, we should now have access to a new chapter. And that new chapter is going to be the biotechnology. And this is going to allow us to make a petal apothecary. Now I've already gathered the essence needed to make the petals. So let's go ahead and grab our essence, which we ended up having exactly 11. Let's go ahead and craft up a few. Now we are going to need a red flower. And this is very important because this quest right here mentions we need a red petal to turn in and also a green petal. So might as well, since we're going to need a petal anyways, make both of those. And I think green, if I remember correctly, we can look through our list here. That's a lime. And to make green, we need to do this one. So yes, having both of these is going to be great. Now I want to show you something cool. Once you've crafted at least these flowers, right, we can actually duplicate them. So we can turn them into petals, and the petals can now be directly turned into dye. But let me show you how to duplicate the petals. All we have to do is place a petal down and then bone meal it and then punch it. No longer do you need shears in order to duplicate these. You will simply end up getting a tall mystical version. And yes, this now allows you to make 4. And we can continue to do this. So we can continue to place the petal and continue to duplicate and duplicate and duplicate or quadruple over and over and over again. And that's how you keep a sustainable amount of petals for Botania. And this is going to be great because we're definitely going to need petals down the road. Now let's use those petals to make an apothecary. And now that we have an apothecary, all we need to do is just grab a bucket of water and we're ready to start crafting. Now, it does give us 4 petals, and this is a great introduction to start making our daisy, which is honestly what's on my head. I should just rip it off my head, but that'd be very painful. I think that would be a mistake. I do want to grab some seeds, and seeds of any kind should work. And what we need to do is toss the 4 petals in here. Introduction to crafting in this thing, and then a seed at the end, and we get ourselves a pure daisy. And this unlocks another chapter. We are going to need to take this pure daisy and make living logs, and then we're also going to need to make living rock. Now, you know what I should have done? I should have taken that initial white petal and I should have duplicated it at least once. This is going to be incredibly painful now. I mean, we will be given some fertilizer, but I think having two, at least, of these flowers usually makes things faster. Now let's get to using this thing. So to get things converting, we just need to place our flower down on some dirt and then place some logs. This will give us living logs. And then we are also going to need stone. And so I'm cooking up some stone for now. This will be made a lot easier here soon, but we're going to go ahead and get this converted. And it takes a couple of minutes, takes about a minute or so. And then all of these logs will convert to a living log. And the same thing needs to happen for the stone after this is done. That will at least get us a floating version, and I'm going to show you how this can be useful. And just like that, it's now converted into this beautiful looking wood. And there we go. We now have also the living rock, but we're going to need to make a bit more of this living rock, I almost guarantee. But this should now open up this quest, and it's kind of interesting the things it gives us. It gives us floral fertilizer, which is amazing. This is how we get more petals, and we're going to use this later on. But it also gives us an overgrowth seed, and it also gives us a floating white flower. And the best use for this is to take this flower and combine it with the floating white flower. And now we get a floating pure daisy. And that's going to be useful because you can actually surround a pure daisy with water. And you can then, if we go ahead and move this down, we can then surround it with water and it will turn it into snow. So now we have a renewable way of getting snow. Just when you thought this flower couldn't get any better. Now, it also gives us an overgrowth seed. And if I remember correctly, I think overgrowth seeds can increase the speed, but we need a piece of grass in order for that to work. And I don't know if we have grass. Okay, so we can make grass. Oh, you know what we do have? We have a pasture seed. And a pasture seed allows us to turn this into grass. And I actually found this seed in the barrels. So that turns it into grass. And then we can use the overgrowth seed on it and then place the floating pure daisy on the overgrowth. And I think this accelerates the speed at which it will convert these logs, if I remember correctly. Now, if it doesn't do that, it still looks kind of cool having that underneath it. I'm going to place water in both corners, and I don't actually think that this needs to be a solid source of water in order for it to actually work. It can use flowing water just like this. Probably could just send one side alone, just like that. We'll test it out. And I'm pretty positive it will turn this all into snow, including the flowing spots. So yeah, oddly enough, it worked on all of the source except for this one that was right here. But that could have been because this converted first, and so this one disappeared. But yeah, that actually worked. It converted this instantly. I love that. Now, ultimately, to make this red wheat, we are going to need a mana pool because we're going to have to get mana powder. And this comes from different things, like sugar, for example, is a great way to convert this over into mana powder so we don't waste our redstone. But it's going to need a prosperity seed. That's easy. Terra wort, which we already have. Redstone. But the mana powder is kind of the thing that we're going to have to worry about because we have to gain source or gain mana. And to do that, we're going to have to dive into this experimental flora, and we're also going to need a mana pool. So this mana pool is going to require an inert crystal. That I think we get from the Amadrone tablet from oil, which we're going to go over here in a second. And then the gem dust, you get that from taking gems that you find. And well, we're limited by how many we have. Well, we're going to have to drop an anvil on them. And so if we take a look at our gems, which I'm sure later on we're going to get these, but these were found inside of containers. So we're going to end up using these in order to smash it down to get our at least first setup. So we can go ahead and actually just use this anvil that's sitting over here. And let's go ahead and get that dust. So we just drop this basically on the ground, and then we drop an anvil on it, and that will give us the dust. So the dust problem is solved. But now we need to get our crystal. And that's where we're going to have to use some tanks. Now, we don't have tanks just yet, but there is a quest we can complete to grab several tanks. And it's under this section right here, the combustion chamber. So underneath this section, which is underneath the electrodynamic theory section, we now see the combustion chamber. And this is going to be a really good source of power for us because it uses oil. And we noticed when we went out and explored, there was oil out there. But if we craft this thing, we're going to get given 8 small fluid tanks. And these are not small, in my opinion. They hold 32 buckets worth of fluid. So we could go out and harvest a ton of oil from around us and use that here. And we also need oil to make those inert crystals. So I think it's time to make our first generator, and it's going to be this one. And after a little bit of crafting, we should now have everything we need to make that combustion chamber. This is pretty nice because it's going to give us access to those tanks and a little bit of reference to pneumaticraft, which we're going to be diving into very soon. So I now need to take all of these tanks, and I want to try my best to fill these tanks as much as I can, as many of these as I can with oil, and that way we'll have a nice supply of these. I'm now out on the hunt for that liquid gold. Good old oil. And we should see them on the map. They are very, very easy to spot. And believe it or not, at least the planet's still rich with oil. Like that's something that didn't degrade. Ooh, there's a big structure up there too. Now this spot looks to be perfect. So I'll place my tank down and I will just simply bucket the oil back and forth into this. For now, it's all manual all for now. Now I just got done crafting this. I went back and I was like, you know what? I bet this would be easier if I used a pump. And I think you can place a pump down here and I can take my generator, so the regular generator that I had, and then I'm going to put my 2 connectors on here. And by the way, the pump is very easy to make. It is just some iron. And we connect that together, give this a fuel source. And I should be able to pump out of this. At least so I hope. So that's going in here. We do need a lever connection on this. And I should be able to tell it what side by using my hammer that this is going to output fluids. So output here, and then I'll use my fluid pipes right here to simply connect to a container. This might be a little overkill, but all we have to do is enable it. And that might pump. Oh, we actually need to tell it what side it's going to be pulling from. So fluid input. And there it goes. So it is now pulling the crude oil from this area, and you'll start to see the source blocks get replaced with cobblestone. And so this would be a little bit less manual than doing it the way I was initially doing it. So yeah, I think this is definitely a less like, a less tedious way because the machine just does it for you. It's actually not too bad. This is working so good. So yes, you just want to make sure that your input is here and your output is where you want your fluid to go, and it will pump the fluids out of an area. That will mean water as well. If you have an infinite source, if you have 2 waters on both sides of this, it should treat it like an infinite source. Now that's only for water because, well, this is oil and this is not water, so it is not infinite. Now I'm back with all of my tanks of crude oil. This is going to be very great. I do want to go ahead and initiate something though. Let's go ahead and get our trading happening. Now to do this, I'm going to have to use my Amazon tablet and shift right click on an inventory and my fluid tank. So we're going to need both of these selected in order to do this trade. And this is how we're going to get inert crystals. So let's go ahead and just say 1 for right now and place our order. This is going to take 5 buckets out of the tank, and then it's going to give me that crystal. And this is how we're going to actually get that initial 1. You gotta love these drones, by the way. So once this is done, that will be one thing. But in the quest, we should get rewarded for having this. Pretty cool. So here comes the other one. And nice, it has dropped it off. So with our 1 crystal, we should now, down here at Primal Forces, should now get 8 more inert crystals, which is perfect because we're going to need them. Now, all of that oil that I just gained, well, we're going to come back to that here momentarily. But for right now, let's go ahead and see if we can't further our quest. So now we have everything in order to make the actual mana pool itself. So that's pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at a mana pool. And we can go ahead and get that going. Mana pool. Perfect. So we need to make the diluted first. And so we just need slabs. And then we'll use the diluted, which we could technically use a diluted, but we're going to go ahead and go directly up to a normal one. And so now we have ourselves a mana pool, but we need to get mana to it. And that's where our experimental energetic flower comes into play. It says, the Energizer is capable of absorbing stored Fe energy from nearby sources. It can draw from batteries, generators, and any Fe containing source. It will convert this energy into a bioelectrical energy called mana, used to power the floral machines. While you may be able to create these later in the physical world, for now, we're going to need to synthesize these under more controlled conditions. And it says, note, this quest is repeatable, so we should be able to repeat this over and over again to make more of these flowers. But for right now, one is going to be more than enough. So to make this, we just need a simple battery, and it looks like it needs to be charged, but it does not. It just needs to be a normal battery. So battery, here we come. So we just need to make this. And do we have everything for this? We do. So perfect. So now we have the battery, and we just need our green flower and red petals. So green petal and a red petal. And then we just need to submit these items. Just the petals. Because I'm pretty sure the battery does not need to be submitted. It just needs to see we have it. And there we go. We now have ourselves an energizer. So yes, we now should be able to generate mana, but we do need power. So let's set up that combustion generator that we just got, and we need to set this up. Now, how are we going to get fluid into the combustion chamber? Now, I remember back in the agricultural wing, we actually have some things over here that we could probably repurpose. And that is this right here, the fluid transposers. Now, we could use a pump. The pump can pull from a tank, but I think this is going to be a much simpler way as it doesn't need power. This will just transfer from one location to another. Now, this is going to be interesting to set up, and we're probably going to be using mini combustion chambers eventually. But for right now, I need to figure out how I'm going to lay this out. So we have a combustion generator, and it has a couple of slots, the blue being its input slot. And so we know that blue is input for fluids, red is input for, I believe, a power source for a machine, and then the gray is the power output. So I need to send power to this through oil. So to do this, I'm going to place this down, and then I'm actually going to place the machine or the oil reservoir right on top. And I should be able to simply place this and right click. And now we're sending this machine oil. And from my testing, it doesn't use a whole lot of oil at all. Now the only thing I need to do is I need to go ahead and place a flower. And so we'll go ahead and get our flower placed down. But it has nowhere to, where's it sending things? Like, we can't just send directly to a mana pool from here. We need a mana spreader. Now, the mana spreaders require these luminators, which are kind of interesting that it requires this recipe. But you can easily get blaze rods now, so that's not a problem. And so making the luminizers is quite simple. We got that done, and this might end up being an easier recipe down the road. But we also need to be able to move this stuff and be able to organize things. So that's where a wand is going to come into play. And we need to take some of our living wood that we get and turn it into 3 sticks, and then turn those 3 sticks into a wand. This is probably better done. Let's see. It's probably better done in a normal crafting grid, so we can make sure to set our flower colors. I think since we're dealing with energy, I'm just going to go with red because it's the easiest for me to make. And there we go. So now we have that set up. I will go ahead and place this spreader down, and we can see this is currently not linked to a spreader. So we shift right click and then shift right click on this. And now that is linked here. And then we need to link this to the mana pool. So shift right click on this and then shift right click on that for it to go into the mana pool. Now this should pull from the generator, but I don't think it actually is. So this is where we're actually going to need this to go into some sort of battery for it to pull from. And for this, I'm going to make a back box. And I think we can hook this directly up. I don't know what direction this faces when we place. Okay, so the red nodule, we should be able to place it this way. And that should start charging up directly from this. And now this is now powered because it's pulling from this. And we'll start to fill this mana pool up. Now, with the shaders, we're not going to see the mana pool physically fill up. But they included something special just for that case. And this is going to be pretty cool. So a new mod called the Mana Reader. And now we should be able to read our mana by right-clicking. We'll see it in chat. So notice there's 800, 900 going up, and it goes all the way up to holding 1,000,000. We got a Blacker Lotus. If we toss this in, it is going to jump quite significantly. And there we go. It went up 8,000 mana from that one Blacker Lotus that you get as a nice little boost. And this is going to allow us to start making seeds, because now we can take sugar and we can start making that mana just by dropping this in. So there we go. So now we have mana powder and we have everything we need to start making the redstone seeds and get access to renewable redstone. So we now have everything we need to basically make our redstone seed. Let's go ahead and place it in. I have all of my items now required, and I'm just going to hold down control and queue them into here. And then last but not least, we need to hit it with a seed. Well, drop a seed in, and now we have red wheat. And I definitely want to use this 15 fertilizer on this right away to improve this. And then we're going to start doing some branch mutating or branch breeding. Not really breeding. What would I call it? Branch duplicating. There we go. Branch, yeah, duplicating. So what I want to do is down here, I want to go ahead and get it placed in, and I do want to start making sure I have it hydrated and everything. So I'll place my crop sticks, make sure everything's hydrated, place it down. Oh, it says can't grow here. This needs less light to grow. I thought that it would just naturally grow. Apparently it does need less light. That's interesting. So interesting. So I placed it back here and it seems to work. That was weird. Now I should be able to duplicate it. I need to make sure this is fertilized. And we want this here so we can see everything. So the stats are all good. And then I want to make sure we double crop stick all the way down through here. So I'm going to double crop stick all through this area. And what's going to happen is as it grows, the next one will grow. And then that next one's going to branch. And what we want to do is we want to branch out like so and continue to branch out, and we'll end up with a bunch of these crops with that 15 duplicated seed. Hopefully, if all things go well, that's ultimately what we want to happen. So there we go. Everything's all set up. Probably remove this one. And nice. So we'll end up with a nice little crop here of these duplicated seeds. And I want to make sure to go through all of these crop sticks and make sure all of this land is nice and hydrated. Perfect. And this should grow. And before we know it, we're going to have a bunch of redstone seeds. Now, in the exact same fashion, we also want to get blue wheat up and running. And blue wheat is going to give us lapis, and it's made the exact same way. However, we just need blue dye to get it started. You can actually bone mill flowers in this from the Flower Patch mod, and you can get more of the flowers you need to make more of the dyes you need. Looky there. And so just like the red wheat, this is made exactly the same way, but now we're going to have lapis. Pretty excited for this. Now, just like this, look at that. It's already mutated, already spinning or spreading across. We want to do the same thing with this, with the lapis. And I'm going to branch off for this one as well. Now, honestly, out of the two ways that you have to be able to do this, one is the breeding method and one is going this route. I honestly think this route is way more fun. I just don't want to be sitting there waiting. I really like to just be actively working on stuff. And I think this is going to come into play a little bit later on, having this set up. So now that we have access to a renewable redstone and lapis source, things are going to get a little bit more industrial from here. That's right, we are going to be able to expand upon our machines and hopefully get into diamond production and a whole bunch of other things very, very soon. And guys, the best way to know when a new video goes live is by clicking that subscribe button. And if you haven't already, now would be a great time to do so. And also give this video a huge thumbs up, if you wouldn't mind. And now it's time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks is going to go out to Caboose. Thank you so much for your amazing support, by the way, over on the Discord, becoming a Discord premium member and supporting me in one of the best ways possible. Guys, I cannot wait for the next episode. I am like so excited to continue progressing through this, and I hope you guys are ready to watch. I cannot wait. I'll see you guys, of course, in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching.